Hi everybody, my name is Lauren Sevier. I'm an author, YouTuber, and mom from Louisiana, and I can't be happier to see this dumpster fire of a year, 2020, in my rear view. So without further ado, let us do a 2020 wrap-up of all the books and things that I read this year. All right, everybody. So I don't know about you, but 2020 was a pretty horrendous year. I know for me and like for the world because of the global pandemic and everything, but I had a few extra like stressors this year. Mainly, I work full-time actually in cardiology. So I was on the front lines in healthcare this whole year. My YouTube channel definitely took a major hit, as did the fact that I published my first novel this year, Songs of Autumn. It's available wherever books are sold and on Audible as well, which is pretty cool. However, like, because of the fact that like the pandemic happened and everything, it was really stressful because everything that I had set up to like help market and promote my book, my entire launch strategy had to like pivot really quickly. So this year was tough for me in a lot of different ways, like personally, professionally, not just with like, you know, mental health and everything that everybody's been dealing with, but just a couple of extra like layers on top of that. Because I knew I was publishing my book this year, I actually set my goal really low because I figured that I would be super busy anyway. So my goal was only to read 25 books this year, which I definitely met. I was expecting to like blow that number out of the water though, and sadly, I did not blow it out of the water. It was actually kind of sad. I only read 31 books this year. So, you know, don't judge me too harshly. My stats on Goodreads was that for 2020, I read a total of 12,386 words, 31 books. My shortest book that I read was The Haunting of Hill House at 182 pages. My largest book read was Outlander at 850 pages. God, it was massive. The average length of the books that I read were about 399 pages, which seems about accurate. And the average rating was actually like a 3.7 out of 5 stars, which is pretty good. I actually read a lot of books that I really enjoyed this year. I guess like 2020 put things into perspective and I was like, I just ain't suffering through this, and just like would not even bother with a book if I didn't think that I was gonna like it. So I read a lot of books that I really, really enjoyed. Let's start with the yays. These are like the 4 and 5 star books for me. The first one that I want to talk about is To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. It's a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but it is definitely like dark and devious. I loved this book. I want to be a mermaid when I grow up. Like, I really do. And to see like mermaids not portrayed as these like, you know, flighty, romantic creatures, but sirens, like actual like creatures of the deep that could kill and will kill and steal the hearts of princes to fall in love with a prince. It was enemies to lovers. It was so good. It was so good. I'm so upset it's a standalone. I want more in that world. I want more of those characters. Like, it's so sad. The second book that I read was Crier's War by Nina Varela, and I loved Crier's War. I actually have the second book, Ironheart, but I just haven't had a chance to sit down and read it yet. And this is a female-female romance in a fantasy genre. So it's a YA fantasy, but it's gay and it slaps. You read it. I don't know what to tell you. Just read it. And then let's talk about, so this year I read the Shadow and Bone trilogy in the Grishaverse, the Six of Crows duology, and King of Scars. I read all of them because I read Six of Crows first, and Kaz Brekker wrecked me, and I'm in love with him, and he doesn't exist, and it's a problem. So basically I started out of order because I didn't realize that there were 3 books before the Six of Crows duology, and then I like went back and read the original trilogy, and then of course after that I was like, well, now I have to read King of Scars. So the books from that Grishaverse series that I consider like a 4 or 5 star, definitely Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. If you do not have Kaz Brekker in your life, what are you doing here? What are you doing? He's amazing. But he's mine. Anyway. So Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Shadow and Bone was pretty good. And King of Scars. The last 2 books in the original trilogy, which is Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising, I was like, meh. I didn't really like the original trilogy as much. Not even gonna lie. But the first book was okay. It was pretty good. After that, I want to talk about, this is actually a romance novel. And I read a lot of these books via like audiobook, fair warning, because I travel a lot for work. So it's the way that I can actually like consume books, you know, most effectively, because I don't have a lot of time between like a toddler and working full time and writing and doing all the things. Like I don't have a lot of time to like sit down and read physical books. So if I have a physical book, I'm not as likely to just be able to consistently read. So audiobooks are how I do a lot of these books, to be fair. Now, what was really trippy for me, Lauren Fortgang is a voice actor for, I guess, Audible or whatever, and she voiced Inej in Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Then she voiced Alina Starkov in the original Shadow and Bone trilogy, and I think that she was Zoya in King of Scars. Then I'm like, okay, here's my first non-Leigh Bardugo book that I've read in like a hot minute in 2020, and it was The Bridge Kingdom, which is a romance novel. It's also an enemies to lovers. It's like spy stuff and world building and fantasy, but it's romance too because there are explicit sex scenes. And Lauren Fortgang was the narrator for this too, and I was like, you are not this character, you are Inej. So it was a little bit trippy for me, like, not gonna lie. The experience was a little bit strange. But it was a good book. The first book was really good. The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. The next 2 books that I want to talk about that were really ones that I recommend, that, again, 4 or 5 stars, they're actually indie books that are co-authored by Erin Michelle Skye and Stephen Brown. And this is The Wendy and book number 2 in the series, The Navigator. So, The Wendy is about Wendy from Peter Pan, but she's all grown up, and Hook is closer to her age, even though he's a little bit older, and he's like a captain in the Navy, and it's Victorian times, and she's like, I don't care if I'm a woman and I'm not allowed to be in the Navy, I'm a feminist, and we're gonna do this. And then, of course, Pan is like older, so it really just works so well. The books have just this incredible voice. They really give Wendy a lot of personality and make you root for all these characters in a new way. It's a great retelling. They have like a novella, and I think the 3rd book is coming out sometime this year, and I'll probably read those as well, but I haven't as of yet. But seriously, both of those books, really great job. Then I actually reread an old favorite of mine. One of my first books that I read in the young adult fantasy genre way back in the day was Old Magic by Marianne Curley, and it holds up. It holds up. It's a resounding 5 stars for me. Time travel, witches, romance, curses. Oh, just all the wonderful things. Read it. That's what I have to say. Then there is The Shadows Between Us by Tricia Levenseller. This is the Slytherin romance that we have all needed in our lives. Read it. It's dark. It's wonderful. This is about a sexually empowered young woman amidst the backdrop of a Victorian era fantasy novel. I mean, she literally is an anti-hero, just like Kaz Brekker, and why don't we see more of these characters in fiction? Write them. Write them. Please. Please. I want to read them. Anyway. Moving on to When Wishes Bleed by Casey L. Bond. This was also another surprising indie read that I found. I enjoyed the hell out of this. I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's like The Selection meets Charmed meets like Hunger Games, and it really just worked. Like, it was very, very well done. I will say this, if you listen to it via audiobook like I did, the narrator had a little bit of a tick where she couldn't say like the hard G's at the ends of words, and it was a little distracting. But that's the only thing that I had to say about this book other than just read it. I mean, it was just very good. Then I actually read The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci, and I thought I wasn't going to like it. I held off on reading this book for a really long time because I was like, I don't think I'm going to like it. It's not normally in the books that I enjoy. But it was like very good. It was a dark fantasy romance that reminds you of like Spartacus and 300, and stakes were really high, graphic violence, all kinds of stuff. And the character's perspective that we got was actually not from a young woman's perspective. It was a man's perspective, like while he's going through all of these different trials and stuff. And it was really refreshing to have that sort of change of pace, because a lot of young adult reads, because I read a lot in young adult since I write in young adult, they are told from, female perspective. And so that was really refreshing, and I enjoyed the mess out of it. So I would definitely recommend The Savior's Champion. And then the last of the 4 and 5 star books that I read this year, this came right in at the end of 2020, but Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa. This was recommended via TikTok, and this was actually a really good romance novel. If you're a fan of like Rhysand and Feyre from the ACOTAR series, then you would really like this series of books. As it continues, it gets more and more like the ACOTAR series. This first book, I felt like was probably the least like ACOTAR, but that was a plus for me as I didn't enjoy it as the series kind of continued. But basically it's about this mysterious figure called the Bargainer. And our main character is a PI who's also a siren, but she killed someone when she was very young, and she has to go to this mysterious supernatural creature called the Bargainer for help. And what happens is he basically gets a lot of promises and IOUs from her, and then he comes to collect 7 years later. And this is like where it all sort of starts and everything. So really, really good book. Not sure about the series, but I'll do a whole video on this book and the series and everything in the future. So we can move on to our next section, which is my 3-star reads, which is kind of the books that I'm like, meh. Yeah. 3 stars, it's kind of like, it's okay. Whatever. I'm not on fire about it. Don't hate it. Meh. So my 3-star reads, or the meh books that I read this year, the first one is Becoming a Successful Indie Author. I just didn't feel like as a craft book it gave enough useful information for people for me to like really love it as a craft book, but I'm pretty hard on craft books in general, so whatever. Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I cannot forgive Diana Gabaldon for being so blasé about making rape a plot point and a plot device in her novel. I really couldn't stomach this. I'm sorry. I couldn't. It's just not in me. Sorry, Outlander fans. Don't hate me. The next one is Crown of Coral and Pearl by Mara Rutherford. So I don't know. I really like a lot of books that have like nautical themes and stuff in them. Like I really like books that are set in seaside palaces, that have mermaids or pirates or whatever. It's my jam. And this one was kind of lacking. Like it was a lot of predictable stuff, and yeah, so it was just okay. A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Brigid Kemmerer. So this is the second book in the series. The A Curse So Dark and Lonely was actually a 4 or 5 star reviewed book. And then this one was about my favorite character, Gray. And I was poised to love this because it features the character that was my favorite character in the first book, like as the main character in his own book. But it fell flat. And I was just like, I like seeing Gray, so that was nice, but the plot and the stuff, and it was just meh. Just my opinion. The next 3-star book is Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. Again, another craft book. I'm really hard on them, so just okay. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. So I read this around Halloween time, and honestly, like, it just didn't hold up. Like, I know why it's valuable in the horror genre, all of that. Like, I understand all of that. But it just didn't hold up. A lot of the language just didn't hold up. A lot of the just different situations and the way things were described and everything. It didn't age well. So I was just kind of like, meh, it is what it is. The next 3-star book is The Traitor Queen by Danielle L. Jensen. This is book number 2 from The Bridge Kingdom, which was a 4-star review. And this one, I felt a little bit like it just was disappointing. So book 2 for me just didn't quite live up to the hype of book 1. And then, of course, as I discussed before, 2 of the Grishaverse books, Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising, were just meh. I just wasn't on fire about this series. Some of the characters annoyed me. It was just a whole thing. And the very last one is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This one, again, nautical themes, pirates, all of that stuff, but the plot was just sort of obvious, and you had to like suspend belief a few times in the book, a few too many times in my opinion, so I was just kind of like, it's okay, but I probably won't read it again kind of thing. Like, I'm not on fire about it. And now we move on to my less than 3-star or DNF books, of which there are only 3 this whole year. That's insane. So the first one was Beauty and Darkness by Elizabeth Briggs. I just stopped reading it. It just wasn't edited well. It was kind of like one of those 99-cent romance novels, and I just didn't like it. So, yeah. And then The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Didn't like it. And Middle Passage by Charles Johnson. Now, this one I will say, it's literally been in my Kindle forever, and it's a beautifully written book, and I have started it like 6 times. But it is a literary novel with very deep themes, and it's something that you really have to sit down and savor and enjoy. And I was just so sick of having it on my like currently reading or whatever when I keep like having to go back. His writing is beautiful. This book is amazing. This is only a DNF because I had to get it off of my Goodreads list. Like, I just had to, because I know that I'm not going to be able to sit down and appropriately enjoy this book until I get a significant amount of time to do that. So I just had to DNF it for that reason alone. Don't hate me. But anyway, beautiful book. So that was my 2020 wrap up, my 2020 in review of books that I enjoyed, books that were just okay, and books that I didn't really like. How did you do? Did you meet your Goodreads goal? What's your Goodreads goal for this next year coming up? Mine is to double this past one. I want to read 50 books in 2021, and I also plan on publishing 2, possibly 3 books this year. So, wish me luck. It would be super cool if you did all the things, like, subscribe, comment, tell me what you thought of the books that I read this year, or about the books that you read this year. Send me your videos. I love talking to you guys. It would also be really awesome if you decided to subscribe or ring the bell for notifications whenever we have more videos that go live. Anyway, y'all have a great night. Bye.